Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodeau, Houma, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number one grocery store
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Weissite, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. And, you know, with all of the different things happening lately, we talk about being able to protect ourselves and our personal information and privacy. All of those things really matter a great deal. We're glad to have a specialist with us. We welcome Michael Brimmer to the show. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
All right. And Michael, of course, Vice President and Head of Experian Global Data Breach Resolution. And so, Michael, tell us a little bit about some of the ways that we try and help protect our privacy.
Well, in this day and age, there's lots of data breaches. In fact, in 2024 so far, we've already had 1 billion records that have been compromised, which is more than all of last year combined.
Wow.
So people have to be concerned about protecting themselves. And a couple things that are general hygiene recommendations are: make sure you're not clicking on any links, make sure you're not answering any unexpected phone calls from people you don't recognize, make sure if in fact you can have an identity theft protection product, whether it's from Experian or another place, that's a good thing. And then the other thing is I would always recommend using a password manager. Make sure that, in fact, you can keep your passwords all in one spot. It will auto-generate passwords that are long and complex and keep you protected.
Yeah. Is there a particular reason you mentioned this increase? Is there a certain reason why we've had so many more this year in 24 than we've had in all of last year?
Yes, Keith, the trend started last year with what we call third-party breaches. The Move It Secure File Transfer Protocol, and this is a software package that allows companies to transfer sensitive data securely, was compromised. And it was the back-end provider to thousands of companies across the world. So what hackers are doing is they are looking at the intersectionality of third and fourth party people in the supply chain that can impact tens of thousands of companies and millions of consumers by hitting them on the back end. And in fact, more recently, some of the large breaches in 2024 involved cloud providers, operational back-end processing providers, as well as some more secure file transfer companies.
For people like Experian, are we really trying to identify and find ways to help prevent those kinds of things? Or is that one of the things that you mentioned with managing our passwords more accurately and more securely?
What we found, Keith, is that 90% of all the data breaches that companies experience are not due to necessarily the software or the malware. Yes, it's part of the package, but most of it is because an employee makes a mistake. So human error is the biggest reason why companies are having these issues. And the most important recommendation I always give to companies is have security and privacy training for every single employee, regardless if you're a board member or down to a frontline worker.
Yeah, so anybody who's associated with that company can end up making some error, some misstep, if you will, in computers, because, you know, not all of us are well trained when it comes to IT and when it comes to being able to manage those things well. Some of us are opposite of computer nerds about being able to do that.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, there's some simple things like with your home internet service provider. There are tools that are available like a virtual private network, which is essentially a conduit in the system that allows you to securely transfer emails and that or send them. And then encryption is available from your internet service provider. I previously mentioned the password manager. So some of these tools are not only free, but they're easily available. And you should take advantage to create layers of protection when you're operating online.
Yeah, and we've kind of mentioned a lot of us were very aware of what happened with AT&T and then thereafter with Ticketmaster. Can you tell us a little bit about those large breaches?
The large breaches that you mentioned involved third-party providers and access to information that was being stored in the cloud. So this information, in fact, being off-site, had access that may have been compromised. It wasn't necessarily the company itself, but it was their cloud provider, which is another great example of why these third and fourth party breaches are a problem, because it wasn't only AT&T as well as Ticketmaster that were impacted by the same compromise.
Right. And again, some of the recommendations that you've made are being vigilant ourselves. We ourselves, it's almost like going to vote. You can make a difference if you actually go and vote. We can make a difference by how we manage ourselves and how we protect our own privacy.
Yes. I think of three things when I talk about how protection works. One, you need to be aware. So if you get a notice of a data breach, you need to read it and not throw it away. Second, the speed of which you respond. You put a credit freeze on, you monitor your credit, you sign up for identity theft protection, you check your social media accounts. And then finally, layers of protection. It's not just one thing, but it's a number of things that you can do, just like you're protecting your house. You're going to put locks on the doors, you might have an alarm system, a dog, or a fence. It's not just one thing, and it's the same application in cybersecurity.
Yeah, and so I think for a lot of us, we think about, checking emails, those that don't do it that frequently. It may be one of those things where we start to develop better habits about how we do that and what we're searching for and how we're searching and just being aware. As a social worker, I'm working with people all the time about, don't answer the phone if you don't recognize the number, and never say yes to anything on the phone and those kinds of things. So some wonderful information. Michael, we appreciate everything that you guys are doing and the recommendations. Thanks for coming on and helping the public with some of these ideas. Thanks
for having me, Keith.
All right, guys, and that will do it for this particular segment of Bayou Time, but don't go anywhere. A whole lot more right here on HTV.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.